Hi, everyone. Welcome back to my singer series. For episode 2, I'm joined by one of my favorite people, a very special guest, the Queen of Lilith, in my opinion. It's Adama, Lilith Astrology.
Yes, thanks for having me on, Lars. I'm so excited.
Thank you so much because we are talking about one of my favorite singers of all time. Absolutely obsessed with this woman. It's Maria Brink from In This Moment.
She's awesome. I'm like, how did I not known about her? I'm so glad you introduced me to her. She's awesome.
I'm so happy to have introduced you. As you can see, I'm wearing the merch.
Yeah.
Yes, I was in, Spotify told me last year that I was in the top 0.5% of all listeners. So I'm, as they say, a stan.
Yeah.
Um,
As they say.
and one thing that I find really interesting about her music is that she really speaks from a Lilith perspective throughout her discography. So I'd love for you to share her chart, and then if you want to just tell us a little bit about Lilith in general, how it might relate to her, and then we'll start delineating.
So Lilith is the archetype that it's really interesting how her story is just gaining momentum, but it's still, there's lack of clarity, and there has been forever, because she is the suppressed dark feminine. So this is essentially the shadow side or the repressed side of all of us that has been silenced throughout history. And this stems from the original story of the original man, Lilith and Adam. And essentially, God created them equally in the story, but Adam didn't think so and overstepped his boundaries. And Lilith was like, no, bitch. Like, yeah. And she defied God, defied Adam, and left. And she was literally demonized. There's tales that she turned into a demon, eats children at night. And then there's also tales of like, no, this is not her. She's the mother of all creation. Essentially, she was suppressed since day one. And this is something that lives in all of us. And that's the reason why I think the story can have a negative connotation, because the patriarchy twisted it as such. But this is a divine feminine goddess who was in her own independence and knew who she was outside of another person, and they didn't want women to feel like that. So if you play up a story like this, it gives women the permission to be themselves. And that's what I truly want to do with Lilith Astrology. My message is have a platform for women to be themselves and learn about themselves through learning about this placement in their chart.
And I think what's so interesting in regards to the Lilith story and how it applies to Maria Brink is especially in regards to like her trajectory within this moment's discography, really what landed them on the scene, even though they'd been around for a decade or more before, was the song Whore, where she took back being called that word and really kind of beseeched in kind of what I would consider like a war anthem in a very powerful way to all women or anyone who has been denigrated with that word, and took it back.
I think that's 100%. That's Lilith energy, is to just not be afraid of taking your power back.
100%.
And early on in life too, wherever you have Black Moon Lilith, it manifests and you don't realize it's kind of in your blinders, or it's in your shadow, because you don't realize that all you have to do is take your power back in whatever area it is. Take your power back, and then don't apologize for it. Be unapologetic. But we are taught by society generally to place up power outside of ourselves, and not look within for our own power. And especially for just the divine feminine energy in this world of just consistently being suppressed. And I mean, I think that, you describe her relationship with her father and her early life, that can create a lot of Lilith tendencies, because you saw the woman being more of the dominant one in the relationship. And so that, or not even just dominant, but having to also be the force and be the one to take care of everything with the family, you then take on that. So that can also kind of stem, you can see the relationship with the mother as well, or the feminine energy in your life.
Absolutely. And, another thing, what we have right now, because unfortunately we don't have Maria Brink's time of birth, which is fundamental for us as astrologers to delineate to our maximum potential. But we do have her planetary alignment, which can show us a lot. And one thing that I notice, and I do not consider Lilith to be a specialty of mine, which is why I'm so happy to have you on here. But I do see that Lilith is in the sign of Gemini, which is really the messenger. It's ruled by Mercury. It's all about getting that message out there. And I find it very interesting that a big way in which she's able to embody high-minded Lilith, divine feminine goddess, is really through her songwriting and the ability to get out that message through song, and the fact that it's opposite a Venus Neptune conjunction, which would be associated with singing and with song as well, to me speaks volumes. And going a bit further, after Horror, she has a song called Natural Born Sinner, where she expands the empowerment to not only women, but to literally the LGBTQ community as well, to other marginalized populations, in kind of taking ownership of becoming empowered with the ways in which they've been labeled a sinner or, a whore, etc.
I mean, I think also it's like that when she exudes that maternal protector energy, that's where that Jupiter can express itself. So she's having such a growth in career, I think, and it comes easily, but there was some challenge here too, because retrograde. And that's, I mean, it's opposite her Mercury. So
Mm-hmm.
opposite Jupiter. And her Mercury is also retrograde in Capricorn. That to me is somebody who can really forcefully drive her opinion home, but has gone through a lot to get to that place. And so I think her embodying both of those, that axis of that masculine energy, but then the divine feminine protector mother energy, that's really where she's getting growth in her career and like her money and abundance.
So I know that you recently discovered and have started to binge in this moment, but you did just use a big keyword for us people who consider ourselves in the Blood Legion or to be in this moment super fans, which is mother. And that's actually Maria Brink's nickname by fans, is that she's Mother Maria. That's the last album title is called Mother for
Oh,
that reason. And so look at that beautiful Jupiter in Cancer, which, really does form tons of oppositions. And oppositions, while considered to be tense and disharmonious, they very much project outwards. And so it shows the need for her to assume this like divine mother figure to kind of override the disharmony that she suffered through her life.
And I mean, even the moon opposite Pluto is a lot with the nodes. It just seems like it's her. She's integrating all of the things that she went through and channeling it through. I mean, for all of you who don't know, that it's like it's metal, so she's she's like screaming out to the world, but through that emotion is really where she can heal just some of the karmic lessons that she's had in her life through, like, I just think with Aries moon, it's like with Pluto, they don't play.
Right, 100%. And like you speak to that, like this was the day in which the moon ingressed into Aries. So regardless of the time of her birth for this day, she would be an Aries moon. And it does speak volumes, the fact that the moon decided to, like her soul picked this chart and the moon decided to align with the nodal axis and with the fact that it would be opposite Pluto, which whenever you or I see moon opposite Pluto, we immediately know that childhood was likely a very tumultuous time and a formative time for cultivating resilience, strength, and the need to kind of like empower from within, I would imagine, given the fact that there's just upheaval and turmoil around the native.
Yeah. And power from within, because moon conjunct south node in Aries. It's like she was just so used to being independent and emotionally independent and reactive, honestly, because she probably had to protect herself. So like, probably got into fights and things like that. But in order in this lifetime, she integrated all of that knowledge and that fierce independence, and kind of is like in her 10th house. Well, no, not in her 10th house.
Right. We don't know if it's the 10th house. We hope it's the 10th house, but we know that at least it's the North Node, which would absolutely speak to long lasting legacy for sure.
Honestly, watching her videos and just I definitely think she has a fire rising, so we could be correct with
We
this.
could be. Yeah.
I
And
think it's very fire, so you know. But this Pluto, I was just saying like that Pluto in Libra, yes, it's a generational planet, but when it's forming aspects to personal planets, like she has a sextile with like Venus and I mean Moon here as well. That's a dark feminine because
Mhm.
Venus and the Moon, the aspects with Pluto. I mean, when you even look at Lilith too, Lilith is trying Pluto, so she is the dark feminine, and part of being the dark feminine is you have to go through dark stuff. Like you're not afraid of the darkness because you've been through it, but you then you could kind of bring it all to light. So she brings it all to light with her music. And I think music is just so healing for people. I know for me, I love metal, like I love rock music because a lot of it comes from a deep place and
Mhm.
we have deep feelings, us Scorpios.
Yeah.
You have Venus and Pluto, right?
Yeah, I'm Venus, Pluto, and Scorpio, and then the rest is Sag.
Yeah. So, and this is, I mean, you guys are matched.
I mean, hello, there's a big reason why I resonate and grovel at her feet, to say the least. You know, I think the other thing that's really important to note about Pluto on the North Node, regardless of the house placement, and let me just stop myself right there. You did bring up the fiery thing. Like, let's just count how many planets she has, regardless of house, that are in fire signs. Like, she has her moon in Aries, and then she has Mars in Leo, and then she has 3 planets in Sag. So 5 of the 10, half of, and there's 4 elements. So we're dealing with someone who, is fire dominant for sure. But with Pluto on the North Node, kind of like the overarching legacy and what the soul came here to do is to change the game.
Yeah.
And is to kind of like in her song The Fighter, she talks about like being afraid of dying and then like coming alive in the flames. And actually Jessica Lanyadoo uses the phoenix as a big keyword modifier for Pluto. And it does really speak to like her, like what she came here to do. And I'm already noticing, like, since it's almost at 10-year anniversary of Horror coming out, a lot of bands adopting her sound, paying homage, a lot of women being empowered to like be a lead singer of a metal band. Like, she absolutely is changing what once used to be a very male gate kept space.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, also that Mars in Leo is square Uranus in Scorpio.
Oh, you're absolutely right.
That's intense.
With Mars representing traditional masculinity and
And it's
kind of like maleness, being square the planet of liberation through disruption. Yep, I could definitely see that be a thing.
and it's retrograde too. So this, I think I mean, she's put here to do exactly what she did and just completely shift art, shift culture. Venus
Yeah.
in Sagittarius is also with Neptune. That's an artist that is not here to do, Robert Frost illustration. like like this is someone who is completely changing the game, and I definitely think that from what I've seen, her videos and everything, yeah.
Yeah, so I would love to ask you a bit more about how Lilith you feel like plays in aspect with the rest of her chart, just in seeing the planetary alignment the way it is.
This Lilith in Gemini is forming a sextile to Mars retrograde in Leo. So when she embodies that, even though she has this tension happening, when she does embody this, she can really express. She's in her truth in terms of her creativity. I think also though, in terms of childhood, that's somebody who had to, it's not like you had a real childhood. Like if she did create or if she did anything fun, it was probably around her music, or that's maybe how she found it. Maybe she also saw other Lilith figures in her life. Like I mean, I've done that all throughout I think we all do. We all pick women or people that we emulate, but she probably picked a lot of Lilith rock star-ish type people, and that was her playtime. But I don't think she really had, she was just old, very young, like just did not have much of a childhood. And I also see that with I mean it's a pretty loose square, but Lilith square Saturn is another one. So it's like lessons through seeing that happen with her mother in the family lineage and in tradition. She kind of took on that. She probably had a lot of challenging relationships in her life with men. I don't know if she's ever talked about that vocally, but men may also have wanted to overpower her. And Lilith in Gemini is about suppression of voice. This that video that we saw where she was literally like, I'm going to go perform, I'm like minding my damn business, going to go be an artist, and these bozos in the audience literally are all yelling at me, and you can't even sing, like, you're, if that happens, that's Lilith in Gemini, straight up. And so that probably was a reoccurrence in more than just her career. It probably has happened to her entire life. I mean, I know for me as a woman, like, there's certain things that I worry about walking down the street that a man wouldn't worry about, or getting a job or doing certain things. And so she experienced that subconscious suppression of her voice all of her life. And I think that this creative outlet and having those experiences allow her to fully express herself. So it's like your soul signs a contract for certain challenges, because you know, okay, well, I need to go through this rough childhood in order to channel it into being like one of the best metal rock stars on the planet. But I think it's like all those early experiences with suppression of voice taught her, and through mastering that, you can also be an empowerer for others. You know, it's really interesting. This has to do with Lilith, but not to do with Maria Brink. But I was just looking at Rosa Parks's chart. It's her birthday, and she has an air Lilith. She has Lilith in Aquarius in her first house, and so it's like through her action, she empowered other people. So Maria, through her voice, once she finally mastered that, because Rosa, it was a long time coming that she finally stuck up for herself, probably. And once Maria did that, then all these things changed around her, and all these things transformed around her in her perspective industry.
I love that. That's super interesting. The other thing that I noticed is the fact that with Lilith and Gemini, one thing that I look for at any placement is like, what does it answer to from a planetary perspective? And is there any correlation there? And the interesting thing is twofold, and I'd love to delineate this with you. Firstly, she's Lilith in Gemini, meaning that it answers to her Mercury in Capricorn, which is opposite Jupiter in Cancer. So that in itself is something. But to pick up on, you know, the beautiful statement that you just made in regards to that square and its sort of meaning behind it, what does that Mercury answer to? It's in mutual reception with Saturn itself.
I see it. Yeah. Here's Lilith in Gemini, and then we have Mercury in Cap, which is retrograde, BT dubs.
Oh, good point.
And with Saturn in Virgo, which is also retro.
Right. So because Saturn rules Capricorn, Mercury would answer to it, but Mercury also rules Virgo in addition to Gemini. So Saturn and Lilith both answer to it. So it is interesting that this square occurs, but they both have the same planetary ruler, which is Mercury, and we're dealing with a singer, songwriter, metal singer here. Another
thing too is if we consider Chiron, she has a grand Earth trine with that.
So. She does. So do you want to talk a little bit about Chiron and how it's tied to deep-seated wounds?
Yeah. I feel like that was the most like Scorpio. Like,
I'm so sorry. My Venus and Scorpio shows a lot.
Like, let's talk about deep-seated wounds.
Let's talk about wounding. I'm so sorry.
Yes.
I'm such a Sag too. I'm just going to be like very blunt about it.
Let's talk about the wounds.
Yes.
She definitely has them. So Chiron in mythology, in Greek mythology specifically, so he was born out of rape, and clearly, you know, when you're born out of rape, that's a trauma since day one.
Mm-hmm.
By his parents and basically forced to raise himself. He was miserable. Obviously, he was not accepted because he like was half centaur, half human, so he didn't look very good or presentable. And so he went through a lot of trauma. But he ended up turning his trauma into being a teacher for other young boys and teaching them how to fight and master their lives and learn new history and things like that. And that helped heal him. So wherever you have Chiron in your chart, we say it's a wound, but I think it's your dharma in this lifetime, which is your life's calling.
Mm-hmm.
Because what drives you when we have challenges early in life, the reason why is so that we can get that resistance to do something with that. And so
Mm-hmm.
for her, Chiron in Taurus, that's a wound in self-worth.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this wound runs very deep. It's retrograde. And I think, I mean, I don't know if it has to do with the father, but it is trine Saturn. That is a good aspect, but these are two intense placements. And so to me, I think maybe she suffered from just certain things with her health. And maybe that was one way she might have taken out some of the challenges that she had with her own self-worth and feeling good about herself. And maybe that manifested in that way. But I think that also is her triumph, because if you listen to her lyrics, I mean, she has a song called Whore. That's like, you know, that's like, it's like, I feel like a whore, but it's her being able to express that because she went through being called that, or people projecting that onto her. And I don't know if she's ever publicly talked about just her health in general or anything like that, but
I don't think I've read anything about the health, but in regards to the self-worth, you're absolutely right. Like Taurus definitely, Chiron and Taurus 100% in my opinion too, correlates very much to a wounded self-worth and the need to kind of blossom. And with Chiron, a big kind of like motto that a lot of astrologers learn is like turning your wounds into your why. And it's very apparent, like you reference with the song Core. In addition to that, her new Grammy nominated song for the first ever Grammy nomination. We're all super excited for the in between. She continues to reference how she was like referred to as such. It speaks to someone who, like, yes, there's that wounded self-worth, but the same words that were used to wound that self-worth have now come to empower, and it's like a blossoming that has occurred. And there's not only turning your wounds into your why, but Chiron was a healer as well. And she's able to heal others through the way in which she was wounded. Absolutely. And that's very much I am very tuned into her social media and seeing other fan response to her, and just seeing the hordes of people, like female or otherwise, who comment about what her lyrics have done for them in regards to healing or making them feel seen, really speaks to an overarching Chironic message. And the fact that Chiron is harmoniously linked to her Mercury, the way in which she's able to deliver the healing, and the way in which she was wounded too is through Mercury ruled concepts of verbal abuse, it seems. Another thing is that messaging can trigger self-effacing patterns of thought as well that we have about ourselves. And then Saturn, which is the other party here, is linked to perceived limitation. So not only are there self-effacing thoughts, but there could also be perceived limitations that she's had to learn to like recircuit and overcome too.
Well, it's also the patriarchy is what I think of too, with that Mercury and Saturn. So it's like, even though, because they're trines, even though she did have that constriction, she used that constriction to propel herself
right
upward. So one thing I did Google, because I'm like, you know what, I bet you she's a vegan. That's why I was harping on that. And she is.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
For animals, I'm seeing like an article. She's a vegetarian and active with the PETA campaign.
Okay, I could very much. I mean, she is truly like a goddess steward of the earth kind of
Yeah.
mother figure. I mean, Jupiter in Cancer. The other thing that I wanted to ask you about, since this is your specialty as well, with the moon very much having very traditional affiliations with femininity as well, or like what your mother may have been like. It's also tied to emotional security and emotional kind of self-soothing. It being sextile to Lilith, but it being in very masculine signs, like the two are fire and air, like how do you delineate that? And then if you can see, there is a rectangle that forms with trines to each of them. You have Lilith trine to Pluto, and then you have the moon trine to the Neptune-Venus conjunction. So what do you think about that?
Her chart is, wow.
I know we don't even need a time of birth, but we absolutely do need a time of birth. So Maria, if you are watching this, please.
Like, yeah, Aries masculine cardinal sign. So, and the feminine cardinal sign is Cancer. They square each other. So it's just completely different energies. So the moon, it's not in its detriment, but the moon is still taking on that masculine role and has to like push forward and be the leader. And I mean, that's not fun sometimes for a mother to have to do. And so I think she saw that. And so she also thinks that that is the role of women. In when I have a fire moon and a fire Lilith, and I was raised by a single mother. So it's like, and my mom had to take on a lot more than my father, who was around, but not as much. So that is a similar situation where it's like you see the woman taking on the masculine role, so then you think that that's what you have to be.
Interesting.
That's fine to be too, because I think she has a lot of masculine planets.
She does. Yeah, she definitely does. That's a really good point.
Yeah, like even though she does have like those dark feminine qualities and message, she's just like full speed ahead and has a lot of energy. I also think it's really interesting. So Shirley Sofer, she's like an early teacher of mine. I'll never forget. She was reading a chart that had a lot of fire in it, and she compared it to, it's like this old alchemist's phrase or saying, and it's called sublimatio, and it's essentially it's a great description of a chart like this. But it's like basically when they would try to make gold, the alchemists, they would boil the water down, and then what was left in there, like what was left in the vessel, it would be in its purest form. So it's like someone that burns and burns and burns and molds and shapes themselves until they become their purest essence that they were put here to become.
Wow, that's so perfect for this chart, and for at least like the parts of her soul that she's like bared for her fans and for the world. It does really speak to that. Definitely 100%. So
forget that wording. I was like, wow.
That's a gorgeous kind of like that's gorgeous imagery. It's a great allegory for this chart, and it also makes me think about the transits that are coming up for her. The interesting thing is, like, with this chart, even though we don't have a time of birth, like imagine if we did, we'd be talking probably for 4 hours about this, but there's still so much to talk about from an alignment standpoint. She is, because of the buildup of Aquarius energy, because of the fact that the eclipses this year, in addition to last year, are mostly Sag Gemini eclipses. There's a lot going on this year. Where do you want to start in regards to discussing transits for this coming year for her?
Well, so you said she was nominated for a Grammy. Was that recent, or?
I feel like that happened. The Grammy nominations probably came out like towards the end of last year. Probably it was like eclipse season last year, and the two eclipses, we had one in Gemini early on. It was about like 8 Gemini, I believe, right?
That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, like look at what's at 9 Gemini. So how do you feel about the eclipse hitting directly on her Lilith, and then she gets this Grammy nomination for all of kind of this work that we've been talking about?
I think that's accurate. I mean, I actually had I've Lilith and Leo, and when we had those Leo Aquarius eclipses, I had
2017.
Major. That was when I really got serious with my astrology classes, and Lilith popped up
There you go.
here was when I had eclipses on Lilith. So especially when it's forming connections to personal planets. I consider people who have Lilith conjunct Sun or trine Moon or on ascendant, which we don't know with her, but I consider them Lilith people. So when you have eclipses on that, that's a personal time for you. And her whole project screams Lilith, her whole look, everything. And it's also in opposition to Venus, her
Hmm.
creativity. And there was eclipses. I think it was 26.
Yeah, it happened on December 14th, which would be it would be in the mid 20s for sure, either 23, 24, 25, 26, something like that. We didn't go back and look. We're very much forward thinking, but regardless, it's within orb of hitting that sun.
Yeah. So, and I think this is not going to stop for her because we have another set of eclipses this
Hmm.
year that are very significant. And you know what's interesting is we are going to have an eclipse in Taurus.
We are. It's going to be at 27 or 28 Taurus, I believe.
Okay, that's kind of far off. So,
But 2028, so like the other thing that I want to note about that eclipse season, we are going to have two eclipses this winter. One is at 28 Taurus, and then the other is occurring at 12 Sag, I believe. So taking a look at her chart, the 12 Sag, not only is that going to be in opposition to the Lilith, and then what's more important is look at the nodal axis. It's going to form a very harmonious relationship, just like that eclipse that hit Lilith last year to that nodal axis.
yeah,
And if we think about eclipses being catalyzing events in related to keywords of what they're hitting, and they're hitting the nodal axis, which has to do with kind of like soul purpose, like evolutionary astrology concepts, it seems like this eclipse season, both last year and this year, is fundamental for the future trajectory and for greater recognition.
absolutely. Yeah. I wonder too, because we had the Cancer Capricorn, if that, what would,
Mm-hmm.
there's anything significant going on for her, especially with an eclipse on Jupiter.
Yeah, we'd have to go back to see the Cancer Capricorn eclipses, but nonetheless, like one other thing that you and I definitely note as astrologers is like there's the initial event, and then there's kind of like the fallout and what happens after the fact.
Right.
And this is her sun opposite Jupiter in Cancer truly represents her becoming, growing into Mother Maria, which is how she's known. Totally nerdy and dorky kind of omission is that when I did tweet her to like ask for her time of birth because I wanted to be as formal as possible, I referred to her as Mother Maria, to just to try to butter her up a little bit. But nonetheless, like eclipses that occurred along that axis, very much, in the fallout from that, we see her not only growing into even further this figure, she named her album Mother.
Wow. So it's interesting I said that. That's wow. Because
Yeah.
and Jupiter does well in Cancer. This
It,
is a beautiful placement. So, and it's retrograde. So
mm-hmm,
she had to go through a lot of internal changes. She probably also had to mother herself and
mm-hmm,
learn how to truly be that nurturer to herself in order to receive that from other people, because I think that's so interesting. That's one of my biggest things I always tell my clients with Lilith is we teach people how to treat us. And as soon as you stand in your power and you start to speak up or say no or have boundaries or not allow yourself to be suppressed, it starts to change you out of reality. And she literally was like, I don't get it anymore. It
right.
doesn't happen to me anymore. Because she probably also got all of that trauma out of her system through her art and through her expression, that now it's kind of all melted away, like the people that were suppressing her. And
Mm-hmm.
she's mastered that energy about herself. I thought that was really poignant that she said that.
Totally. I think if I were to consider, like, I think the eclipses for her, even eclipses are traditionally viewed as malefic. I think that in this context, they are very much serving and helping her positively. However, she is this year, it's that time of year for her, the only time it will ever happen, she'll have her Uranus opposition this year. And I almost want to close with the Uranus opposition because we have the Saturn return and then we have the Uranus opposition. And I feel like those are two like key events in any native's life. What does the Uranus opposition mean to you?
To me, it's whatever's stagnant and whatever is not in alignment needs to go. And also wanting to break out and break free and be more like the authentic self. So because I feel like it can be a different experience for everyone. Like if she was in like a stuffy corporate job and was not expressing herself, I would be like, that's gonna be a shit show. But I feel like with her, she has the ability to be herself. So I think we may see even more of just like a push or transformation with her craft and what she does.
Totally. I personally, and I should trademark this, I think I call Uranus the Kool-Aid man. Um, he's going to bust through your faulty foundation to liberate you from your thirst. He couldn't take the door because the door frame was a solid foundation, but that drywall was shit. And it needed to be remodeled for months. And so he's easily able to break through that. But his overall goal was to liberate you from your thirst. So the Uranus opposition for a lot of people is the midlife crisis, where they realize they've been stagnant, as you said, and it's their time to kind of break away and break free. In my opinion, she's someone who authentically lives her truth. And so I only think the Uranus opposition is really where I think there's a capability either for becoming kind of for mainstream recognition, if that's something that she wanted, or to take her message and even amplify it further. I think in addition to that, one thing that just recently happened is that In This Moment came out with a BLM t-shirt that proceeds would go to support Black Lives Matter. And so liberation work for all marginalized populations could become very much interwoven into her ability to be this like goddess mother-like figure.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. I could see that. And Uranus is in Taurus.
Mm-hmm.
With transiting Uranus, we'll have her Mars forming an aspect to transiting Uranus too. So it'll be like this nice fixed
Definitely
energy that's just like, let's change some things creatively. So her Mars in Leo, that's a big source of her creativity. So I think that her opposition, she's going to go in a better direction, I think, for her in that point of her life.
Yeah, and definitely like I almost wonder, like she's done so much for so many other people with her music. I almost wonder whether like that better direction which you speak to is like her being able to also live for herself in her most authentic way, if that hasn't been able to be the case.
Yeah.
I love that. Awesome. So that was taking a look at Maria Brink's chart. I just bow down to you and all that you do for our community.
I bow down to you.
Oh my goodness.
On everything. I'm loving everything you're doing.
Thank you. That's mutual. Love you so much. I can't wait to have you back to discuss Lilith and to discuss other really empowering topics. You and I think, share the desire to use astrology as a means of empowerment and support. And so I just love that.
I love that too, because we need it now, right? Everybody. Mm-hmm. Just with the world, everyone, stay powered from the inside. That's what counts.
Amen. So that was our episode. Feel free to like, comment, subscribe, and please plug everything and anything.
Yes. So follow me at Lilith Astrology. I'm on pretty much every single network. So if you like TikTok, I'm there. If you like YouTube, I'm there. Instagram, Twitter, everything. And then you can also check me out at lilithastrology.com.
Perfect. And if you don't follow me already, follow all my stuff here. And see you next time.